Good day, everyone. Eric from Helps, law firm for seniors on YouTube, live today, Thursday, July 10th. I'm glad to have you here. Please tell me you can hear me. I'm talking to you from a remote location in New Orleans, Louisiana. But good to have you here. So let me get going here. So my name's Eric. Been an attorney now for 46 years, the founder of Helps. And the topic we're going to start out today is, first off, welcome if you're first time here. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat feature. I'll address them there. And if I don't address the question, maybe remind me. And then you can always call us toll free 855-435-7787. We want you to get answers to your questions. Okay. So let me double check and make sure everything is working okay here. Oh, you can hear me good. Excellent. So I'm going to start out. The questions posed is, because I get asked this a lot by seniors, should I be scared if I'm sued? Okay. And I'm going to explain why in almost every situation you don't need to be scared. Okay. And I should know, I filed between 30 and 40,000 bankruptcies before Helps was started in 2012. And so I know the law, and then I know what happens in the real world. Okay, but let me explain the basic thing first. You know, people, oh, I'm going to be sued. Okay, I'm scared. You may never have been sued before in your life, or maybe someone's threatened you with a lawsuit. Why shouldn't you worry if you're a senior? Number one reason is that federal law and state laws protect your income. For example, your Social Security. Okay. Social Security was started in about 1935, and one of the first part of the law was it was be protected from anyone trying to collect debt from Social Security. Now, the only exception is the IRS, and even then, it's unlikely it's going to happen and it could be stopped. And then the only other exception would be child support, but we run into that very rarely. So no one can take your Social Security. Now you say, well, Eric, what about my pension? Well, no one's going to be able to take your pension. If someone sued you and they got a judgment, could they take your pension? No. There was a federal law passed in 1974 called ERISA that protects your pension. And if it's not protected under that federal law, then there's a state law that will protect your pension. So your pension's safe. Now you say, well, Eric, what about when it gets in my bank account? Can they take it then? Can they garnish my bank account? Well, in 2012, a federal rule was put in effect that told banks that if they got a writ of garnishment on someone, they had to examine where money came from that was deposited into the account at your bank account. And if it came from a federal source like Social Security, they're supposed to take that amount that you got and times it times two, the amount you get each month times two, and then protect that amount in your account, even if money in that account came from some other source. So if you got $1,500 to Social Security, twice that would be $3,000. That's protected automatically. If someone sued and got a judgment, then they can't take the money. A judge can't order you to pay the debt. Okay, all a judge does is say, "Oh, you owe the money." He can't force you to pay the debt. Your income is protected. So for that reason and other reasons, a senior doesn't need to fear a lawsuit for owed debt. Okay. Now you might say, well, are they going to come take my car? Are they going to take my furniture? What about my home? Okay. Every state has state laws, and there's federal laws too, that protect equity in property, like so much equity in a car, so much equity in household goods. And, it depends on the state. but it is simply not a practice of consumer judgment creditors like a credit card to go after your property ever, even if you have excess equity in it over and above this exemption for the state you live in. Okay. So, like Kim says, I'm so worried about our home and vehicle. A lien putting no one would put a lien on your vehicle. No one's going to they can't put a lien on your vehicle. It is possible for a judgment to be a lien on the house, but for a lot of reasons, that's not going to be a problem. And we talk about that here, and we'll talk about it more, okay, as we go on. But that's not a problem. That's not going to be a problem, okay? So Farmhouse is saying in 3 years, I'll get another pension with a payoff offer where you can get it either a monthly payment or a one-shot payoff. Is there a way to protect it if it's a one-time payment? Well, it's protected if it's, you would want to keep it segregated in a separate account, okay? But I think mathematically it's probably better to get it monthly, but, you can make that decision, okay? So good to have you here. We got things to talk about. If you have any questions, put them in the chat feature. So back, should I worry if I'm sued, if I'm a senior? That's really the ultimate threat that a debt collector has. If you don't pay them, they can say, well, we're going to sue you. Okay, well, if you understand that if they sue you and get a judgment that they can't collect anything from you, then you don't need to be scared. You don't need to worry about that, okay? You don't need to worry. You may have heard the term judgment proof. What that means is that if a person doesn't have any assets a creditor can get if they have a judgment, then you're judgment proof. And that's the case for seniors that are getting Social Security, pension, disability, VA benefits. They're judgment proof. So Lori asked, does it using your service have a negative impact on you being able to get future credit? Is it like filing bankruptcy? Well, okay, I'll explain that. Okay, first off, a lot of seniors, when I started HELPS in 2012, HELPS was started because a lot of seniors would come to me and they'd ask about filing bankruptcy. Well, they didn't need to file bankruptcy because their income was protected. They couldn't afford to file bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is not cheap anymore. Normally, it's going to be around a couple $1,000s with the filing fee. And for a lot of seniors, bankruptcy would be like Brer Rabbit getting into a briar patch. I mean, they might have excess equity and assets and they couldn't file regular bankruptcy. They'd have to file what's called a Chapter 13 and make monthly payments where they couldn't afford. So for a lot of seniors, bankruptcy just doesn't make any sense at all. We have videos that talk about that on our channel, and I talk about it here too. And once again, you can always call. Now, what about your credit? Well, a few years ago, clients would ask me, what about my credit? I want to get credit. And for most of our clients, they're really not worried about credit. Or if they enroll in HELPS, maybe they have a credit card or two that they're current on or small balances, and they could keep those credit cards. Okay. Now, if you file bankruptcy, any credit card you have, even if you don't owe any money on it, it's going to be wiped out because the banks subscribe to a service that lets them know if someone files bankruptcy and they cut the credit card off. But with HELPS, if you have a credit card that's still good, you keep making the payment, you can keep that credit card. Okay. So let's talk about credit a little bit more. So a couple years ago, we started a program with Phil Tyrone, who I've known for a long time. And when I was filing bankruptcy, he would help our bankruptcy clients restore credit after they filed bankruptcy. And I asked Phil a few years ago, I said, because we talk off and on, I'd say, Phil, what about my seniors? A lot of them are asking about credit. And he said, Eric, there's no reason why your seniors can't get credit back without having to file bankruptcy. How is that? Well, because your credit is based on your recent credit history. So if you have poor credit and you stop paying it, but then if you establish new credit, you can literally build your credit up to a 720 credit score within 1.5 to 2 years. And that's what we have this program we have for our clients have been part of helps for at least 90 days. It's called 7 Steps to a 720 Credit Score for Seniors. And you can rebuild your credit up just as fast as you can rebuild it up after filing bankruptcy without having to file bankruptcy and without having to pay that old debt. So your credit is based on your recent credit history, and the fact that you may have some old credit that you haven't paid. Even if they sued you and got a judgment, it won't affect your credit anymore. See, the credit bureaus in 2018, they stopped reporting lawsuits and judgments on credit reports. They're no longer there. Okay. They don't do it. Why don't they do it? Well, they were getting sued because someone would go to buy a home and it would show a judgment and they would get the loan because the credit bureau hadn't removed the judgment from the credit report. And so they were tired of getting sued. And so they said, we're not going to report judgments or judgment liens or tax liens anymore on credit reports. We're just going to report what people tell us. So judgments don't appear on your credit report anymore. So you can rebuild your credit. And we have an email that we can send you if you're, we have one that we send to people that are prospective clients or new clients, and then that talk about this program, where I talk about it with Phil. And then we have another email that we can send you after you've been part of Helps for 90 days on how to enroll in this program, which is free. It doesn't cost you anything. But a lot of our clients don't care about rebuilding credit. But if you are interested, you can do that. Okay. Eric, someone tried to serve a judgment to my son from the sheriff's office, but he was not at home. He is very worried now because I don't live in the U.S. since. You don't need to worry about that. I don't think the sheriff was serving a judgment. What he was doing was probably trying to serve papers for a lawsuit. Okay. But if you live overseas, and even if you live in the U.S. and your income is Social Security, pension, your protected income, you don't need to worry. You don't need to file. You don't need to worry about the lawsuit. Now, if he does serve you, if you serve your son, you can get us a copy of that, and we'll send a letter to the attorney who's sued. See, if one of our clients gets sued, we have them get us a copy of the lawsuit, the first 2 or 3 pages, and we send a letter to the attorney who sued you. All we need is the attorney's name, address, and case number. And we explain to the attorney that our client's income is protected. They're not going to file an answer. And we understand they're going to get a judgment. Remind the attorney of the protected nature of your bank account. So you don't need to worry about it. They can't do anything. Now, collections show on a credit report, but once again, after your collection gets, after 90 or 120 days, then they write it off as a debt. It may still show there, but once again, as you rebuild new credit, your credit will build up. Okay. Now, part of this program with 7 Steps to a 720 Credit Score, it's 7 videos. I think there may be 6. We call it 7, but there may be 6, only 6. But he also has a bi-weekly or monthly call-in where you can call in and ask him questions about rebuilding your credit. Okay. So Ms. HS, mentioning the lien on property, living in an unlimited homestead state versus the states with limited amounts in states is a part of what's helping liens on properties from moving to take a home. Well, no, they just don't take a home if they get a judgment lien. It's not their practice to do that. Okay. So what Mrs. H is saying is that in some states, they have an unlimited exemption, or it's a real high exemption in equity in the home that you can have. For example, in Texas and Florida, they have, with few exceptions, they have unlimited exemptions on your home. And you could sell a home. There's papers you have to file, and to get a lien released so you get all the money from the sale of your home. And then there's states like California that have exemptions of like $700,000, and you don't have to do anything. Just the lien doesn't attach. And there's other states as well. I think Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri. I mean, there's a lot of them. He's concerned if they ask me for my address and chase me all over the world. In other words, he doesn't want to lie. He says he doesn't have to answer any questions. You didn't have to talk to them, and they're not going to chase you all over the world. You tell your son he has absolutely nothing to worry about. Zero. Not even a little finger's worth of worry. They can't do anything. Okay? He can always call and talk to us. They'll be glad to talk to him. Tell him why he doesn't need to worry. And that's anyone here. The whole purpose of helps, if you're listening to me, and, if you've not talked to us before, you can always call us with questions. And then if you decide to enroll, we can enroll you. We don't turn anyone away. We enroll people over the phone. We keep you on the line. We push a button. You're going to get an email from us that says, welcome to Helps. That confirms you're a member of Helps. And you're going to send us the creditors you don't want to hear from anymore, that we need the name, address, and account number. And they're going to leave you alone. Okay? So we got some questions to deal with here. And here's one. There we go. I'm helping my mom with a lawsuit she received in June. We're a few days away from having to respond, and she might need to request an extension as we just received more details on the loan from the bank's lawyers. Took my mom to the doctor where she was supposed to get treatment. She canceled the treatment, and she assumed, that they weren't going to do anything. But now, all of a sudden, 2 years later, they call her back. She says, I have an opinion about the medical practice, and it's believed the owner knows the system well and closes and opens businesses often. But all I wanted to know now is to free my mom from this nightmare. She was desperate to get some pain relief. Instead, she got a lawsuit. Okay. And so apparently she went through a service, she canceled it, and now they're trying to collect from her. Mom doesn't need to worry as long as her income, which it is, her income is Social Security pension, it's protected. It sounds like she's being scammed by this creditor or collector. We'll talk to her. If she's got other debt, she can turn those into us. She doesn't need to worry about anything. Okay? The whole purpose of Helps is if you ever do worry or have a question, you pick up the phone and you call us no matter how often. Okay? That's what we're here for. See, the magic thing about Helps is we represent you ongoing. It's not just one time. Normally you go to an attorney and he represents you, one day, or he does one matter for you and you're done with him. But with Helps, you're a client literally forever. So that if you ever get a new debt collection notice from a new debt collector, you get that to us. We'll send a new cease and desist letter out to that new debt collector, and they're going to leave you alone. See, when you're represented by an attorney, debt collectors have to leave you alone. They have to communicate with the attorney, not you. And that's the whole purpose behind Helps. So that when we represent you, you give us your creditors you want to hear from, we send them a cease and desist letter, and they leave you alone, and peace comes back to your life. So this person asked, I think this was on one of our videos. It says, upon receiving a cease and desist letter from Helps, does the creditor have to immediately stop with the calls and harassment, or do they have a grace period? No, they have to immediately stop. And they normally do immediately stop. When people enroll in Helps, we tell them that it usually takes anywhere 2 to 4 weeks for the harassment to stop. Because, we try to send a letter out between 24 and 48 hours from the time we get it. Usually it's 24 hours. Usually it's 24 hours. Someone just emailed me something, but I popped up. I had to read it, lost my train of thought. And we send a cease and desist letter out, and they're going to leave you alone. There is no grace period. Okay. Now, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act does apply to debt collectors, not original creditors. So an original creditor we send a letter, cease and desist letter out, even to an original creditor like a credit card company, because they're going to stop calling you, but they may still send you a bill. If you don't want to get the bill, you need to throw it in the garbage, or you can do a change of address, have the bill sent to your name, care of helps with our address. Yeah, but they're going to leave you alone. Don't want you to worry. Okay, I don't know. I've talked about this a couple times this week earlier, but I'm concerned about the furniture company. Will they come get the furniture? I can't talk to them. They just talk over me. She's probably saying that she can't afford the furniture and they're trying to collect from her and they're not listening to her. They're just trying to get her to pay the debt. Are they going to take the furniture? I kind of doubt it. If you want to listen to my YouTube live yesterday or the day before, I think I talk about that in detail. No. This person asked, if you have a Medicare and supplemental insurance and they don't cover your medical expenses and you don't have the money to pay, does a senior have to pay those debts? No. I mean, Medicare and your supplemental insurance is paying almost all the debt. Now, if you owe some more, do you have to pay it? No, your Social Security, your pension, your disability, that income is protected from a debt collector, including from a medical debt collector. Now, if the medical provider is your doctor that you see regularly and you owe him some money, then maybe you don't want to give that to us for us to send a cease and desist letter out to your own doctor. Maybe you just pay him whatever you can afford, $10, $20 a month, some token amount. They're getting most of their money from Medicare, and they know you're up against it. And as long as you give them something, I have no reason to believe that they would ever cut you off or turn you away. Okay? So this person wrote in an answer to one of our videos, and they said, what about your credit score? If you have to rent an apartment or house, they check your credit score. No one will rent to you. Well, and I answered it this way, and then I'll talk some more about that. Landlords are concerned that if a person was sued and their income was garnished, they would not be able to pay their rent. This is not the case with seniors. Their income is protected. HELPS has a letter we call a landlord letter that we provide to any senior, whether they're a member of HELPS or not, to give to a prospective landlord explaining the senior's protected income. Regardless of negative credit entries, their income is protected and will be available to pay rent. In a perfect world, it would be great to maintain good credit. However, sometimes it's a choice between paying for current rent, food, medicine, or keeping up with credit card, paying for your basic needs versus keeping up with your credit cards that you can't afford to pay. And then once again, when you enroll in HELPS, if you want to try to rebuild your credit, you can do that through 7 steps to a 720 credit score. And also we have that landlord letter will help. Seniors are about the best tenants a landlord can have because they get a steady stream of income. Their Social Security, their pension. They're not going to get laid off. That money's going to always be there, and it can't be garnished or taken from them. So, when landlords understand that, then, they're not going to be hesitant to rent to you. Now, the reason we give that landlord letter to people is that you can show it to a prospective landlord before you pay the application fee, because sometimes the apartment complex, they might have rules. Maybe the upper echelon doesn't understand that seniors' income is protected. So we want you to be able to show that to the person who's taking your application so that they can know what to do. Understand that your income is being able to be protected. So this person writes us and they say, I'm a senior on disability and can a credit card sue me? I'm on a senior on disability and credit card debt. and the credit card sued me. So I'm protected. Yeah. If you have disability income, that's protected under state law. Okay. It's going to be protected. It can't be taken. This person writes in, well, what about medical debt? They say, can a medical bill lead to someone losing their home? No. Here's my reply. I didn't put my reply, but I'll tell you what my reply is. Now, in 46 years of practice, I've probably seen a lot of people that have had probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills. I've never seen a medical debt that ever sued anyone try to take anyone's home, even if they had equity in the home over and above the exemption in the state where they live. No, they're not going to, it could be a lien on the home that might have to be dealt with down the road. Probably not, but maybe, as I've explained. But as far as them using state laws or different laws to try to foreclose on a home or take a home if you had excess equity for a medical debt, no, just like a credit card debt, they're not going to do that. You don't need to worry about that being done. See, that's one of the reasons HELPS is here, so that, if a senior, if you do have debt and you don't pay it, you enroll in HELPS, and if you later get sued, you might not, but if you did, you can always call us and we'll go over this stuff with you. We don't want you to worry. I get a kick out of some of these answers on some of our videos. Okay, this one says, they listen to one of our videos, either with me here or with Senior Living. It says, this is all fine and dandy for someone who is single. But for a senior who still has a wife who is not a senior yet, we still have all the same usual issues to face as younger folks do. Because when you're married, then your spouse debt is also your debt as well. What was the rest of that? Fine and dandy. And I said, not so, for a lot of reasons. That's all I said. Okay, so I'll explain to you why that wouldn't be an issue. So, first off, if you have a credit card debt and it's in your name only, your spouses are going to be responsible for it, even in what's called a community property state. Some people might say, well, Eric, you're wrong. In community property states, the spouse is also going to be responsible for it. It's not the practice of credit card companies. If the credit card is in for the husband's name, for example, and the husband does not pay it, they're not going to go after the wife. They're not going to do that. Okay? Even if she's younger. So it's also fine and dandy for someone who is married. These laws I'm talking about. Okay, so this person asks, seniors' income is protected to a certain amount. Yes, seniors' income is protected to a certain amount. Now, then what happens when a senior gets served a report to a pretrial mediation? If the senior does not show up to this pretrial mediation, hearing the collector's lawyer will obtain a judgment, including all court costs and fees. Is this judgment the lawyers can levy your bank account? This you cannot stop. What do seniors do now? Well, okay, his conclusions were all wrong. Okay, so I'll explain. So sometimes if you get sued with a summons and complaint, there might be a date and time for you to appear in court, and they may call it pretrial mediation. That's where some courts in some jurisdictions, some states, or some counties, they want people to go and have someone else mediate between the two to see if something could be worked out. If you're a senior on Social Security, you don't have to go. You don't have to do that. Okay. And then he says, well, if you don't do that, they're going to get a judgment with court fees and costs. And then they can levy your bank account. And this, you can't stop this. What do you do now? Well, he's wrong. You see, if they get a judgment and if they happen to know where your bank and they levied your bank account, you know the answer. If you've been listening to me at all, you know that twice the amount of your Social Security deposited in your bank account is automatically protected from garnishment, regardless of what funds are in there, where they came from. So they can't, even if you had more than that in there, it's still protected. You can file challenge of garnishment or claim exemptions. And so there's nothing to, quote, do now. Your income's protected. So let's see if I got some questions I need to deal with here. Okay. Oh, I got a bunch of questions to deal with here. Sorry about this. But don't charge-offs and collections stay on your credit report for many years? Not necessarily. Your credit report, like I said, your credit report is based on your recent credit history. Okay? So, I mean, you can rebuild your credit up to 720 credit score or higher within a couple of years. I'm not an expert on restoring credit. Phil Tyrone is, and that's why we have this program available for our clients. You can rebuild your credit. So Ketchup says 75 years old, 45,000 in credit card debt, 12,000 old on a small tractor. Doctor just gave me 2 years to live, can't work anymore. 1,000 Social Security, still making payments on a tractor. What should I do? What? I don't know what the tractor's worth. You got a couple options. If you don't need the tractor anymore, you can stop making the payment on it. You can sell it if you have equity in it, or you can stop payment and let them repossess it. And if they repossess it and they sell it and you owe some money, you're not going to pay it because your Social Security is protected. Okay. You know, you can concentrate on your medical condition. You don't need to worry about the debt, and you don't need to worry about paying the credit card debt, including the tractor bill. It'd just be like if you had a car that you couldn't drive anymore, if it blew up on you, whatever, and you owed money on it, you can stop making the payment. They can repossess it. They'll sell it for less than what's owed. They'll send you a deficiency notice. You don't have to pay it. Okay? So you don't need to worry about the tractor. Don't need to worry about the car. You don't need to worry about the RV, any of that stuff that goes back. It's going to be okay. And you always call and talk to us, 855-435-7787. We don't turn anyone away that needs our help. How about sending a cease and desist letter to the lien holder? So about the tractor. So what we tell people on a car or a tractor is, you know, if you can't afford it anymore, you stop making the payment. Wait till they call you about the missed payment. And then you tell them then, hey, I can't make the payment anymore. Come pick it up. Don't call them while you're current on the payment, because you'll frustrate them and you'll frustrate yourself, because the person that won't know what to do. But if you're behind on the payment, that person that calls you will know what to do, and they'll make arrangements to come pick it up. But you don't need to worry. You're not going to have to pay it. They're not going to be able to collect from you. Okay. And then a lot of times what we'll tell people is, you know, wait till you get the letter showing how much money you owe, because after they repossess it, they've got to sell it to determine how much you owe. And it's theoretically possible they could sell it for more than what you owe, and they might send you some money back. Now, that's highly unlikely going to happen, but I've seen it happen before. So they're not going to bother you in the interim. But once you get that deficiency notice saying how much extra you owe on the tractor or the car or the RV or whatever it is, then at that point you get that to helps, and then we'll send a cease and desist letter out to the lender, and they're going to leave you alone. Doesn't matter what you're getting, coach, in income, Social Security, pension, disability, it's protected. You're not going to have to worry about the credit card debt you owe, or you're not going to have to worry about the amount you owe on the tractor. Okay. So fear of debt collectors and the unknown, that's what helps us here for. That's why we do these YouTube videos Monday through Thursday. And you can always call. They tell me I can't get life insurance because I'm going to die. Can you make that? Well, yeah, you could probably buy life insurance, but at some point when you're older and you get life insurance, the benefit is based on how long you've had the life insurance, more like a savings account more than anything else. You can't buy life insurance for, $50,000 and you've got cancer, you're going to die in a year and you're going to pay $100 a month, and in a year you're going to get $50,000 life. No, it doesn't work that way. Okay? You probably don't even need to worry about life insurance. We have emails that talk about life insurance. And we'll always talk to you, catch up. You can call and talk to us. You don't need to worry about your debt is the bottom line. And I say that to anyone out here listening, whether they're like ketchup or not. If you have debt you're struggling with and your income is Social Security, pension, disability, it's protected and can protect you from the collectors harassing you. And we're always here to answer your questions, no matter how often you call. You can call every day if you need to. Okay? Richard asks, how often does a doctor working for a medical corporation cut you off from service? I pay on the bills, but sporadically. I have visits are recorded with labs. Well, I really don't hear about it happening, Richard, to tell you the truth. It has happened, but I can't remember the last time someone told me they got cut off from their doctor. That's why I tell people, if you have your own doctor, stop paying them the hospital. You could stop paying the specialist. You can stop paying this person or that person. But if it's the own doctor that you see all the time, maybe you send in a token amount every month. Because remember, they're getting most of their bill paid from Medicare. Okay. Yeah, we normally wouldn't want to send a cease and desist letter out to your own doctor that you see all the time, telling them that you're not going to pay them anymore and pound sand. That'd be like rubbing salt in their wound. No, we don't want to do that. So you pay them, I don't care what you pay, $5, whatever you think you can afford. Tina asks, however, now seniors with student loans are having their Social Security garnished. Not true, Tina. That was what the news came out on around May 5th, that the administration was going to start doing set-offs of 15% of Social Security. Well, a few weeks later, they came out with an announcement saying, in early June, or the middle of June, saying, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to put a hold on it. I did some videos with Senior Living on this. And I remember I told what's his name, the guy I do the videos with. I told him I wouldn't be surprised if they changed their mind. And sure enough, they did. After we did the video, and he called me when the administration changed their position, he said, Eric, I wonder if our video caused them to change their position. I said, I don't think it hurt. I got a feeling a lot of seniors people were calling in their congressman and saying, what's going on here? And then what I said was that, Trump has had this thing about Social Security. When he was running, he was saying, I don't want there to be taxes on Social Security. And this big good bill, whatever he calls it, changes the way Social Security gets taxed. So I think Trump has a thing about Social Security, people not trying to protect that for people. Whether you like him or not, that's just a fact. I don't get political here. I'm just saying, I get the sense that he's got a thing about Social Security being protected. Sure enough, they announced that they're not doing a set off of 15% of Social Security. So don't worry about that. It may start again, and hopefully when it starts, they'll have a different procedure so that you can get on an income-based repayment plan and not have to pay anything like there is for currently not collectible status with IRS. I have a big history with student loans and garnishment being and garnishment of student loans. 15% of student loans helps our law firm was the plaintiff in a class action lawsuit against the federal government to stop a set off of 15% of student loans from about 2018, and it stopped it. And then COVID stopped, and it stopped it then. And then it wasn't until recently, like a month ago, that they said they were going to start it again. Now it's stopped again. Okay. Now, maybe seniors that have a lot of income that owe student loans, they should pay towards their student loans. But the problem I have is if you're modest or more poor income senior, you should be able to get on a program where you only pay a little bit or nothing based on your income for a past due student loan, like it is for taxes. Okay. Dr. 720 credit card, they suggested bankruptcy. I would love you to talk to me about that, about your situation, to see what they're saying. Okay, Gwen? And when you call helps, you can ask for Eric, ask that I be interrupted. If I'm not available, then I'll call you back. Yeah, Tater, you're right. The debt collectors can sound intimidating, but the law is a law and we have rights. They just hope you're unaware of those rights. That's right. Hey, they only have to tell you we're a debt collector. Any information we use can be used for that purpose. They don't have to tell you if your senior income's protected. And what's sad is these companies that are supposed to help you pay debt, like debt management companies, many of them are nonprofit, except for very few of them. They're not going to tell a senior, hey, you don't need our help because all your income is protected. They don't tell you. Said they sign you up, putting some seniors into utter poverty, making payments they can't afford to pay. No, I don't want 720 pitching people for $39 a month. I think I know what they're talking about. I'll explain it to you. Later. I'm not going to do it now. But no, we don't have. They're not. This program is free for our clients. Okay, so let's see. Questions here. Jimmy says, I listened to 720 credit score, did it all on my own. I now have 7 credit cards, some with the same companies. Yeah. So, okay. Sometimes I have a hard time finding the questions in here because you guys talk amongst yourselves, which I don't mind. Okay. I make around, Salvador says, I make around 500 per week delivering Uber Eats. Could that money income be garnished if I receive a judgment? I suppose it's theoretically possible, but it's probably just as likely that you'll be serving dinner to Martians on Saturday night or figuring out what you're going to give them for dessert. No. You know, it's kind of like self-employment income. How would they know you're working for Uber Eats? They don't know that. They know where they're going to find out. And who are they going to garnish? How do you garnish Uber Eats? Where are they located at? It's not like you're working for a local employer. You know, it's going to be nigh near to impossible for them to garnish your money. Okay, it's not worth worrying about. Okay, I'm gonna call and talk to them about that, Katrina. Yeah, 720 credit score is for people that file bankruptcy, but they do have a program for seniors. I know we pay them a fair amount of money every month to do this. I want to make sure they're doing it right. So I am going to call them and talk to them about this. Okay, I got some more questions here that I have to deal with. Let's see, here we go. This person contacts us from Florida. I'm a senior citizen with large credit card debt, mostly built up during COVID period. All of my debt is at least 3 years old or older, and I'm now on fixed income. And I would like to help her advice on how to handle it. Ideally, I would like to see if I could get a credit card with a very small credit limit again, one that I can manage from here on out. Yeah, well, you can talk to us. We'll go over what Helps does. If you want our help, you can enroll in that person can enroll in Helps. We'll send cease and desist letters out to your creditors. They're going to leave you alone. This person contacts us from West Virginia. I think I talked to her. My only income is $1,200 Social Security. They're married, but they have separate bank accounts and separate finances. She owed about $10,000 in debt and was really, really worried. They were buying a mobile home on land in both their names. The homestead exemption in West Virginia is $35,000 for a single person, $70,000 for a couple. The home was protected into the homestead exemption. She didn't have anything to worry about, but she didn't want the creditors harassing her. She enrolled in Helps. I'm going to send cease and desist letters out to her creditors, and they're going to simply leave her alone. She's not going to need to worry anymore. Person contacts us from Georgia on July 1st. Says, went over the income protections. What's notes from one of our paralegals? We went over what we do, and she has credit card debt. She's still paying it, but struggling to pay it. She wants to talk it over with her husband. Called back yesterday, looks like. We completed the intake. We read what we do, and also spoke to her husband at the same time, and they enrolled. And they're happy they found us, it says. You know, we talk to a lot of people, and you can tell if you've listened to any of our videos that are happy they found Helps. Wish they would have found us sooner. That's why we always ask our clients to share what Helps does with others. We're the only law firm in the nation that does what we do. Okay? And that's protect seniors and disabled persons from correctors harassing them. So this person contacts us from Ohio. They're age of 66. They have $36,000 in credit card debt. They get $1,900 in Social Security. The payments on the credit cards are almost $1,200 a month. I've not missed a payment, but I don't have much for medical insurance, storage unit, life insurance. My biggest fear is that my 2 growing children would be responsible when I pass. No, if you owe debt when you pass away, your kids aren't going to be responsible for your dad. No way. So, they called back, went over what we did. He's living with his kids because of health issues, but might want to rent in the future. And we explained that landlord letter that we have. He's still making credit card payments, but wants to stop, wants to go over this with his children. They don't know that this parent has this amount of debt. We're always happy to talk with a senior and one of the kids. We always do that. Okay, I think I'm going to let me double check, see if we got any more questions here. I decided to start paying off my charge-offs. Will this be reported on my credit report to increase my credit score? I kind of doubt it. I'm not an expert on this, but I don't think it's going to make a bit of difference. Okay. Once the letter is sent out, how long will the creditor stop calling? Well, we got to send the letter out. It's going to take a week for the post office to get it there usually. And then it's going to take them maybe another week to process it, for 2 to 4 weeks. Now, in the meantime, if they called you and you're a member of HELPS, you just tell them, and you don't have to answer the phone, but if you did, you tell them you're represented by HELPS, not to call you anymore, and give them our phone number, and then hang up the phone. Okay. I had to pay $49 to join 720 credit score. Now I pay a monthly fee. And you're a HELPS client, Mary? You call and you talk to HELPS. Tell my staff that I want to know about this. No, there's confusion from someone there. It's free for our clients. Okay. So looks like we've come to the end of the day. Like to thank you for listening. If you're a senior and if you have debt that you're struggling with and you have questions, be sure and call us toll free 855-435-7787. We've got attorneys and paralegals who are going to answer your questions. We don't turn anyone away that enrolls in HELPS. The cost to enroll in HELPS is minimal. A lot of our clients get our help for free. We don't want you to worry. Okay. But you call, and so a lot of times seniors will call us 2, 3, 4, 5 times before they decide to enroll. Doesn't matter. We're here to answer your questions. Don't want you to worry. You're going to be fine. So I will talk to you on Monday. Have a great day. God bless. Bye.